There you go. Magandang umaga po sa lahat ng ating mga kaagapay. It is another September weekend. Alam ko most of you, if not all of you, have had a very long week. Pero maraming salamat po because you decided to still wake up on a Saturday morning and join all the other kaguro, kaagapay, para po once again matuto tayo not just from our speaker this morning but also from each other. Again, ako po si Jambi Santos, ako po ay inyong kaagapay at panandaliang humahalili po kay Sir Franco. Kitang-kita ko po sa mga comments, miss na miss niyo po si Sir Franco. Wag po kayong mag-alala, nandiyan naman po si Sir Franco. Nasa backstage lang po siya at simultaneously po ay nagtatatay duties din po siya. Ayan. So, alam ko po, ipinangako sa inyo ni Sir Franco na hindi niya kayo iiwanan. So again, worry not. He is just there. Ako lang po ang naatasan mag-host duties for this morning. We have a very exciting session ahead of all of us. Katulad na lang nung session natin last weekend na natutuwa ako kasi when we asked our teachers kung so far ba ano yung pinaka-paborito ninyo na webinar na ibinhinatid sa atin ng kaagapay, marami actually yung nag-say na collaboration. The one that was given to us by Sir Franco, marami sa inyo na natuwa, natuto, and found it very helpful. So, okay na okay po yan. Sana po dagdagan pa natin with this morning's presentation. This time naman po on critical thinking. Bago po tayo mag-on air kanina, bago ako mag-on air kanina, I was going through the comments at sobrang natutuwa po ako kasi parang sa comment section pa lang meron ka ng webinar na ina-attendan with all of the teachers sharing their thoughts about critical thinking, why it is important. Tapos, wag din po kayong wag kayong mag-atubili na mag-share ng inyong mga best practices, ng inyong mga questions, at kung may makita kayong tanong na gusto ninyong sagutin, pwede po yan. Ayan. Again, alam nyo po itong ginagawa natin na 4Cs. Like for example, last Saturday we had collaboration and today we'll have critical thinking. This is more than just things we try to acquire to pass on to our students. Pero para rin po sa atin to, bilang teachers, ayan, we all would benefit, hindi lang teachers, bilang parents, citizens, or whatever else hat you wear, we will all benefit from learning about collaboration. Itong ginagawa natin ngayon, this is a good example of collaboration, of critical thinking. And then we'll also have a session on communication and creativity. Ayan. So bago ko po ipakilala, bago ko po i-turn over yung ating webinar screen to our speaker for this morning, gusto ko pong bigyan lang kayo ng mga reminders. These are the usual reminders that we give every time we have a webinar. At ito po, malamang memorized na ng marami sa inyo. Pero dahil po every webinar, meron tayong bagong nadadagdag na kaagapay and we're very happy about that. Allow me to give you some webinar reminders. Una, evaluation links. Okay? These will be given to the live viewers for the first 30 minutes before posting to our FB page. Ibig sabihin po, pagkatapos ng ating webinar, yun pong 30 minutes after that, that period, meron na po tayong link na pwedeng sagutin, pwede na mag-evaluate yung mga nakapanood po sa ating live session this morning. But not to worry kung kayo po ay kabilang doon sa tinatawag nating pinauso ni ni Sir Franco na team replay at parang ano na rin, tinitake na rin ng mga kaagapay natin. Pwedeng-pwede naman po. Pwede kayong mag-team replay, panoorin ninyo sa YouTube channel ni Sir Franco yung kung ano man po yung ma-miss ninyo, and the evaluation links will still be available for you to answer. Bakit ba kailangan ng evaluation link? Una, siyempre para patuloy po nating ma-improve yung ating webinar, yung atin pong mga inihahatid sa ating mga kaagapay. And of course, ito rin po yung sole source namin of information for the certificates. Ayan. If you noticed, hindi na po kami nagpapa-register, or most, if not all of our webinars, wala nang registration because anyway, una, free naman. At pangalawa, that would not be the basis for our certificates. Ang basis po natin yung evaluation links, para po makagawa kami ng certificates, and those certificates, bigyan nyo lang po kami ng kaunting oras. We will be working on them and they will hopefully be sent to you within 7 days. Ayan. Kung magkaroon man po tayo ng mga problema about certificates, like nagkamali ng pangalan or may nabaliktad kayo na na-type, and that of course will be reflected in the certificate, please do not forget to communicate with us. Okay? Kasi bahagi naman po yun ng goal natin, ng gusto nating mangyari sa Kaagapay, that all of us, all of the members of Kaagapay get into just one community. Let's communicate with each other. Okay? So, share nyo rin po kung halimbawa meron kayong mga napagtagumpayan, awards that you receive para po ma-inspire yung ating mga other teachers. So, again, evaluation links, yung first 30 minutes po para sa mga nakapanood ng live. But 30 minutes after that, bubuksan na po namin yung all the other evaluation links para po makasagot yung iba. Okay? And one lang po, tandaan lang po natin, one lang po yung evaluation link na kailangan nating sagutin. Usually, nag-open po si Sir Franco ng maraming links just to accommodate all of the participants who will be answering. Pero isa lang po yung kailangan nating sagutin. There will be a question and answer every 30 minutes. Ayan. So, pagka nag-start na po yung ating speaker after 30 minutes or roughly around that duration, magpo-pause po tayo. We will address questions that you may have based on the comment section. O kaya ako po, pwede po akong magpahatid ng tanong para sa inyo. And then we'll continue, and then 30 minutes again, we'll have another round of question and answer. Pero tulad po ng sinabi ko kanina, pag meron pong nag-post ng tanong at palagay mo, alam mo yung sagot or pwede mong masagot, wag po kayo mag-atubili. Gusto po natin yung ganyang kind of community na nagtutulungan tayo. So, what is our session this morning going to be? Alam ko, nabanggit ko na critical thinking, but specifically, the title of our session is Critical Thinking, Revisiting Higher Order Thinking Skills in a Distance Learning Modality. Ayan, yung HOTS. Lahat po ng guro, lalo na po yung mga katatapos lang ng kanilang teaching units o yung mga nag-MA. Ayan, alam ko po, nasa puso ninyo at isipan ninyo, baka napapanaginipan pa rin ninyo yung HOTS. Okay? We know it's very, very important. We also know that it's a challenge to get these skills or to pass on these skills to our students. Pero paano pa kaya sa panahon ng distance learning? Diba? Paano kung bilang na bilang lang yung inyong online synchronous session with your students? Paano kung modular yung inyong napiling platform for the school year? So, it's a challenge on a perennial challenge, pero hindi po natin yan susukuan. Okay? Tayo po ay mga guro, never po tayong sumusuko on any student, and ito pong challenge na to, hindi natin susukuan. At para po tulungan tayo this morning, ito, very familiar face na rin po sa inyong lahat. Kasama po namin ni Sir Franco palagi. Our speaker is also a member of the faculty of Xavier School. Kasama po ni Sir Franco. And to share with us this morning his thoughts, ideas, reflections on critical thinking, the second installment of our 4Cs of 21st century learning series. Sabahin niyo naman po ako. Salubungin po natin ng isang masigabong palakpakan, Mr. Angelo Malyari. Sir,
good morning po, everyone. Ayan. So, good morning, sir.
So sir, pinangako ko sa kanila na
Sige po.
na
So,
once
I will be
you're
sharing my screen po. Sige, para po makapag-umpisa na po tayo. Sige po, sir.
And then, sir, later on, after about 30 minutes, I'll see you again. Quick Q&A tayo, and then you can continue.
Sir, nakita mo na po ba ng screen natin?
Not yet, sir. For now, we see you, and if I'm not mistaken, that was still the screen of Sir Franco. Sabi sa inyo, nandyan po si Sir Franco eh. Ayan, antayin lang po natin ang screen ni Sir Angelo.
Sige, sir. Tanong ko lang, sir, nakikita na ba ng screen po? Not yet. So,
ayan, presently loading ata.
Okay, ulitin ko po.
Ayan, Sir Angelo, maraming nag-good morning sa'yo. Ayan. And nag-good luck din sa'yo. Many are excited about the topic of critical thinking.
Technical difficulties pa yata, but sige po, I'll do it again. Ayan.
Mga kaagapay, kape po tayo. Sige, antabayanan po natin.
Sige po. Meron na ba? Ayan, good morning po. Good morning to everyone. Ayan. So, tinitignan. Maraming salamat po. So, as tulad po sabi ni Sir Jambi, while we wait for this. So, yan. Wala pa rin po, sir. Wala pa rin ating screen.
Wala pa po.
Ayan, good morning po sa lahat.
Ayan, watching from San Antonio, Nueva Ecija. Ayan, good morning.
Wala pa rin po, no? Okay.
Watching from Pilar, Sorsogon.
Hopefully, okay na po ito. Yan po ba? Meron na, sir? Wala pa rin po.
And ano siya, sir? Currently loading. Ayan, nawawala-wala. So, we also have our friends from Sumadat, Dumalinaw, Zamboanga del Sur.
Currently loading. Yung nawawala-wala, sir.
Zamboanga del Sur. Ayan. Good morning. And ano pa ba? From Agusan National High School, Butuan City. Magandang umaga po. Ayan, please don't hesitate to greet each other. Ayan. Baka nini nyo naman. Ayan, meron na si Sir Angelo.
Na? Ayan
yes, sir. We see your screen now. Again, very, very excited.
Ayan.
Good luck, sir.
Sige po. Maraming salamat, Sir Jambi. Ayan. So, okay na po ang ating screen. Ayan. Thank you. Ayan. So, hopefully po, kung mawala man po ako, nandiyan naman po sila Sir Jambi and Sir Franco na medyo saluhin. Hopefully, hindi po mawawala ang ating internet. But, we'll try our best, okay, I will try my best to share my insights on critical thinking po. So, yan. So, I always want to start. So, gusto ko mong simulan yung discussion with the why. Kasi, I don't know kung kilala niyo po I think kilala naman po natin si Simon Sinek, where he always focus on starting with why. So, simulan natin sa bakit. Bakit ba natin kailangan ng critical thinking? Kasi kung titingnan natin, dapat alam natin bakit siya importante. We know that it is important. We know na kailangan natin ng critical. Pero bakit? Ano bang meron sa sitwasyon natin ngayon? So first, ito ng reality po natin. The reality is that we live in a VUCA world. Maybe the term is something new. Maybe the term is familiar for some. Pero VUCA stands for four words which our world today is currently on. So V stands for volatile with unstable challenges. So napakarami pong mga challenges ngayon. Hindi natin kung tayo pag tinitingnan natin ng buhay natin ngayon, nung challenges noon ay hindi na katulad ng challenges ngayon. Napakarami nang nangyayaring bago. It's so unstable. Sometimes we know, but at the end of the day, we will be surprised. Hindi pala natin alam. Kasi sobrang unstable ng challenges. U stands for uncertain with unknown outcomes. So, if I think about it sa ating mundo ngayon, di ba? Bago magkaroon ng pandemic, kaya natin okay na ang buhay. And all of a sudden, nagkaroon ng pandemic, nagkaroon ng coronavirus. Parang lahat ng mga iginagawa natin, lahat ng mga iniisip natin, hindi na natin alam kung saan tayo pupunta, unknown outcomes. Even now, after this pandemic, ano kayang klaseng mundo meron tayo? Some would say, hopefully, we are going to the better normal, and that is what we really wanted. But what is a better normal? Something that we still don't know at this point. Of course, complex with many interconnected parts. So, hindi na lang siya black and white. Okay? Dati, madali lang kasi kung may mga bagay, alam natin kung anong tama, mali. Minsan ngayon, nagkakaroon na ng complications kasi interconnected na. Even in knowledge, hindi na lang science lang. You can actually integrate that, connect that to other field, other areas of knowledge. So, hindi na lang siya isa or hindi na lang siya alone. Okay? It's very complex. Everything is interconnected. And then, ambiguous with lack of clarity. So, hindi natin alam kung ano talaga. Minsan, hindi na clear. Sabi nga nila, I don't know kung aware kayo sa term, nung gray areas. Napakaraming gray areas na ngayon sa mundo natin. So, this is the world that we are living in. So, imagine us and imagine our students. Ito nung na-experience nila. Ngayon pa lang, di ba tayo, as teachers, nahihirapan na agad tayo kasi ang hirap, hindi natin alam paano mangyayari kapag magkakaroon ba ng learning, paano nung learning, paano natin ma-ensure na nagkakaroon ng learning. So, those things already comprises, what we see, how we see the world. Paano pa nung ating mga estudyante? Diba? Napakaraming nangyayari sa mundo. At the same time, every day, we have to make a decision. Kailangan natin mag-decide every day. At every moment of our life, we have decisions to make. Okay? Some of these decisions may be trivial. So, ano na susuotin natin? Okay? Anong kakainin natin? Anong oras ka babangon? Okay? Or for some, siguro kung kayo ay into online shopping, ano pipili mo? Si Lazada ba? O si Shopee? Parehong 99. Parehong may sale during this time. So, some of them are trivial. Some of them, we don't even think about. You don't need to sit down and think about all the options. Okay? Will I wear a black shirt or a white shirt? Okay? But some decisions entails a certain importance. Ito ng mga life-changing, 'di ba? Sa ngayon, 'di ba? Pag tinignan natin sa mga news, ang hirap kasi ang daming mga desisyon na napaka-importante. 'Di ba? Susunod ba tayo? So hopefully, 'di ba, sumusunod tayo sa nung mandated ng batas. Okay? Mandated in this particular situation that we are in. Okay? following the rules, following the protocols that we have. Magwe-wear ba ako ng mask o hindi? Okay, lalabas ba ako sa bahay o hindi? And even more important decisions where it's a matter of, it will really affect our lives. Diba? Anong klaseng guro gusto ko bang maging? Anong klaseng buhay ba ang gusto ko sa pamilya ko? So, ang daming decision. Every day, there are many decisions that we have to make. And according to Brian, Oshiro, from a TED Talk, sabi niya, if you want children to thrive in our complicated world, we need to teach them how to think. Because the world is not only complex, it's complicated. Diba? Pati nga sa status natin sa Facebook, nagkaroon na ng it's complicated. Diba? Kasi yun na nung mundo natin eh. So, kung gusto natin, yung mga bata natin mag-survive, mag-thrive, maging successful sa mundo natin ngayon, kailangan turuan natin sila kung paano mag-isip. Paano mag-isip. And, sabi rin ni Marie Therese, the VUCA world needs citizens with a critical mind who can distinguish between facts and propaganda, who cross-checks information and news, who look for the other perspective. We can stop and reflect on events, reactions, and behaviors. So, titingnan natin. Ngayon pa lang napakarami, di ba? Napakaraming fake news, napakaraming news. Sabi nga, may term sila ngayon na parang information overload. Sa sobrang dami ng information, minsan ang hirap na nating i-grasp. Di ba? Hindi na natin ma-contain lahat. Tapos kailangan pa natin alamin kung ano nung tama at mali. Ano nung totoo at hindi totoo. Napakaraming fake news. Napakaraming post-truths. Okay? So, at marami sa atin guilty dyan. Nahihirapan tayo. Diba? Isipin lang natin. Kapag nag-Facebook tayo, when we scroll down our feeds, how many of us would stop, read what is posted before liking it? Paano kapag article? Kunyari may nag-post ng kaibigan natin, co-teacher natin, nag-post siya about an article. Binabasa ba natin o la-like na lang natin? Thumbs up? Heart, love? Or kapag may mga bagay na hindi tayo agree with, do we just put thumbs down? So, in a VUCA world, we need to know how to distinguish facts and propaganda. We need to cross-check information in news. We need to look for others' perspective. Mahalaga yon, especially in critical thinking. So, hopefully, at least malinaw sa atin kung bakit natin kailangan ng critical thinking. Ito na nung mundo natin, we live in a VUCA world, at kailangan natin mag-design every day, every single day of our lives. At sa sobrang dami ng information, minsan, yun, dumarating ng overload. At kapag hindi tayo critical, we will just adhere to certain things. We'll just agree to certain things kahit hindi natin alam. Maganda nung caption niya. Catchy yung news niya or yung headline niya. Tama yan. Or maraming nag-share. So siguro totoo yan. So, hindi lang pwedeng ganon. Kailangan we are also critical with the many things that we are encountering in life. So, bakit kailangan natin? Bakit kailangan nating tignan yung pagiging critical in this particular manner? I will like to highlight two challenges. Or actually, I will just word it into two challenges in critical thinking. Pero napakaraming challenges sa critical thinking. But I want to highlight two, which is internal. First is our minds are fast. Napakarami nating naiisip. Ang daming nangyayari sa buhay natin. Minsan, hindi nga natin masundan. And our mind is so fast with regards to decision-making, with regards to certain information. And this particular BER, having a particular mindset, fast mind, minsan, we have a tendency to go with our gut, di ba? Ito nung gut feel ko, ito nung pakiramdam ko eh. Di ba? Siguro kasi ganito, kasi masaya ako, so siguro ganito ang nangyayari. Ito nung tama. Or sometimes, we even go to our impulse. Di ba? Initial reaction. Di ba? Wala nang isip-isip minsan. Mabilis agad tayong mag-aksyon. Kaya nga nung term, di ba, maraming mga nagto-term, alam ko, marami sa atin nakarinig na, or marahil marami sa atin nakagamit na noon, no? Nagdilim yung paningin. Wala nang isip-isip, di ba? Act on impulse. Agad-agad, gawa. Huwag na natin isipin. Or, for some, passion. Di ba? Emotion. Although, hindi ko sinasabi dito na walang lugar ng emosyon sa ating critical thinking. Actually, sa mga nababasa ko nga, kailangan they work hand in hand. Because there is what we call the heart, the mind of the heart. But siguro hopefully matatouch natin siya later on. Okay, sa ating mga discussion. Pero marami kasi sa atin, sobrang passionate, sobrang emotion natin na hindi na natin iniisip ng mga ginagawa natin. Di ba? Parang, example, in love tayo, masyado tayong in love. So, minsan pag masyado tayong in love, lahat na gagawin natin kahit irrational minsan, di ba? Okay? Minsan nga, we have a term there. As a CLE teacher, so medyo inano ko na medyo bad siya, pero yung the T word, di ba? Maraming nagiging ganun sa atin kapag nagmamahal tayo. Or kapag galit na galit tayo, hindi na natin, again, nakikita yung ibang perspective or kahit ano. Okay? That's one. One of the challenges of critical thinking is that we have a fast mind. Okay? Another is that the other spectrum, lazy naman ng utak natin. Marami rin sa atin ang lazy. Paminsan-minsan lazy ng ating mga utak. What do I mean by that? Marami sa atin stubborn. Pag mahirap, pag bago, ayoko niyan. Diba? Hayaan mo na sila. Okay? Kaya na nila yan. Or masyadong mahirap, ayoko na yan. Okay? Stubborn. Tigas ng ulo. Okay? Or may mga biases din tayo. Okay? Marami tayong biases actually. Pag tinignan natin, may mga biases, religious biases. Ito sabi ng simbahan, so bias tayo minsan sa simbahan. Okay? Or ito nung sinabi ng professor ko, so dapat ito talaga, tama to. And for our children, for our students, minsan ganun. Ito sinabi ni teacher eh. So bias, kahit tinatama natin minsan, kasi marahil iba lang nung pagkakasabi, so na iba ang meaning. Pero there are many students, that even us, might be guilty of that. Biases, we have our own biases. May mga kinikilingan tayo. May mga tinitignan tayo mga bagay. And sadly, there is even some people who are close-minded. Ayaw na nilang makinig. Yun yung mas mahirap. Critical thinking asks us to do many things. And this hinders us to think about, okay, and try to evaluate, examine the things that we need to examine and evaluate. So kapag may biases na tayo, kapag close-minded na tayo, wala na. Kahit ano pang pag-explain, dahil sarado na ng isip natin, wala na. So it's not that those are the challenges. Those are just some of the challenges of having a critical mind. So now that we at least have a vision of why we need to have critical thinking, now we look into what is critical thinking. So, maraming definition ng critical thinking. And I would like to give a very broad meaning of critical thinking, which is deliberately analyzing information to better judgment and decision, to make better judgment and decision. So, in a broader sense, when we talk about critical thinking, what we do is that we analyze the information. So, lahat ng informasyon na nakukuha natin, we try to analyze it in order for us to make a better judgment and decision. Para magkaroon tayo ng mas malawak, mas tama Okay? Mas nakatuon kung ano nung dapat na desisyon at judgment, especially on things. If you try to break it down, napakarami niyang pwedeng i-break down. Pero I want to highlight 6. Okay? Critical thinking asks us to understand the logical connection between ideas. So, bawat idea ay may connection, regardless of what discipline it is. Kaya nga minsan, nakakalungkot, may mga bata tayo na medyo dichotomize yung kanila, or tayo mismo, minsan, dichotomize yung ating belief on ideas. Ito nung certain things na nangyayari. Ito nung mga dapat lang. Masyadong science yan. Hindi yan pang CLE. Or hindi yan, pang history lang yan. Hindi yan pwede sa math. But actually, if you try to think about it, kailangan makita na as critical thinkers, we have to make that connection, that logical connection na may connect sila actually. Another is to identify, construct, and evaluate arguments. Mahalaga yon kasi lalo na kung gusto natin maging critical thinkers, we need to identify, construct, and evaluate the arguments. Kasi iba-iba ng argumento, iba-iba ng mga information na makukuha natin. Hindi tayo pwedeng tanggap lang ng tanggap. Dahil sinabi ng nanay ko to, dahil sinabi ng kaibigan ko to, ito dapat ang tama. Dapat tayo rin mismo, we know how to identify, construct, and evaluate that argument. Tama nga ba talaga? Third, detect inconsistencies and common mistakes in reasoning. Because marami ang inconsistent at even mistaken sa kanilang reasoning. Especially teachers kapag sila ay may mga biases. Kapag sila ay may mga kinikilingan. At makikita natin yan even in our society now. Diba? Just to give a distinction, diba? In politics, kapag etong kinikilingan mong party, eto minsan ng reasoning mo. Pag eto yung kinikilingan mong party, eto ng reasoning naman. So, sinong tama doon? We have to know how to detect inconsistency and mistakes in reasoning. There's a difference between rationalizing, rationalizing our stance and critically thinking about our stance. Rationalizing yan nung parang we just do whatever we can to protect that particular idea, that particular thinking. Okay? Or kung may mga biases sa atin, biases. Again, an example of that is confirmation bias. Confirmation bias, ito yung nakikita lang natin kung ano yung gusto natin makita. At hindi natin nakikita ng ibang side. Kaya, lahat ng reasoning natin, minsan ay towards lang dun sa kung ano yung gusto natin makita. Fourth, solve problems systematically. Critical thinking also involves problem solving. So, kailangan tingnan natin yun. Okay? Ano nung pag nag-isip ako critically, paano ko to masusolusyonan? Paano ko makaka-arrive into a certain solution, an answer? So, problem solving, mahalaga yan sa critical thinking. Fifth, identify the relevance and importance of ideas. Because sa sobrang dami ng ideas na pumupunta sa atin, we have to know and distinguish if this idea is important and relevant. O baka naman, hindi naman talaga. Trivial lang siya. Okay? Kumbaga, palabok lang siya doon sa ating mga kahinakailangan. And worse, kapag nakatuon lang tayo doon sa mga trivial, doon sa mga unimportant ideas, nakakalimutan natin ng pinaka-importanting idea. And last, reflect on the justification of one's own beliefs and values. Again, reflect. Mahalaga yung tignan. Bakit ganito yung paniniwala ko? Bakit ganito yung mga pinapahalagahan ko? So, reflection is actually part of critical thinking. So, sa pagtinignan natin ng critical thinking, sabi nga, di ba, sa title natin, it is focusing on higher order thinking skills. So we try to go beyond the basic level of comprehension. Diba? So hindi tayo doon sa memorizing, remembering, doon tayo sa mga analyze, evaluate, create, diba? Apply. So those are higher order thinking skills. Pero minsan, sa sobrang focus natin sa higher order thinking skills, nakakalimutan natin yung isang aspeto ng critical thinking. At kapag tinignan natin ng history, bakit nga ba nagkaroon ng critical thinking? We will always go back to this person, kay Socrates. Ang sabi ni Socrates, the unexamined life is not worth living. At anong pinapahalagan ni Socrates dito? Self-examination, reflection. Tignan natin nung sarili natin, nung buhay natin. Pag tinignan natin sa higher order thinking skills, wala siya doon. Maybe sa evaluate, pwede natin gawin yun. Or sa analysis, pero ngayon tinitingnan natin introspection sa sarili natin, hindi lang yung sitwasyon. So sa Greeks nagsimula yung critical thinking. Tapos if we move forward to our history, we will find St. Thomas of Aquinas. At kay Aquinas, he go further, hindi lang self-assessment, hindi lang self-reflection. He wants or he did cross-examination of his own beliefs, self-correcting. So sabi nga sa kwento nga, si St. Thomas Aquinas is one of the brilliant minds of the Catholic Church. Pero siya mismo, he criticized his stance, his beliefs. Kasi gusto niya maka-arrive into the more objective truth, in the more objective and not subjective realities. So, ginagawa niya, kino-cross-examine niya mismo yung kanyang mga paniniwala, yung kanyang mga values pinapahalagahan. And then, we go now, moving forward, in the 19th century, we have, of course, John Dewey. And kay John Dewey, doon natin na nung reflective thinking, the inquiry, ang pagtatanong. Kaya nga later, pag tinisa sa atin, paano ba maging critical thinker? We always start with that question, with that reflective thinking. We ask that question. And it's a reflective thinking. So, may reflection, merong kang pagtingin pa rin sa sarili. And then, in the 1940s, tumating na, of course, is the think about thinking, which is the metacognition. When we think about the way we think, that is also critical thinking. And so, sabi ni Saga Briggs, in his article, ano nga bang critical thinking? So, she tried to separate what is and what is not. Okay? So, pag sinabing critical thinking is not, one, para sa kanya, ang paniniwala niya, simply mimicking others' thinking. Kasi nga, wala ka ng sariling isip. Inulit mo lang kung ano yung sinabi, ano yung binigay. Two, it is not simply agreeing to other thinking. So, hindi ka lang nag-agree. O, tama yan. Na? Oo, may punto ka. Third, it is not being biased towards one's way of thinking. Yung tinitingnan mo lang, ako ang tama. Tama yung paniniwala, tama yung perspective ko. Or the other spectrum, critical thinking is not being biased against one way of thinking. Ito nung paniniwala na ayaw ko, hindi ako naniniwala dyan. So, hindi mo na siya tatanggapin. That is not critical thinking according to her. Fifth, to draw conclusions too quickly. At marami sa atin madalas ganyan, di ba? Pag nakarinig tayo ng isang news, minsan yung news, di ba? Yung minsan nakakalungkot pero minsan nababrand. Like maraming Pilipinas, chismosa, chismoso. May narinig ka, pag nirelay mo na ulit sa iba na nung meaning, iba na nung news. Di ba? Di ba? The joke nga, parang merong nangyari, di ba, may nangyari sa sa dalawang tao, pag na-relay yan nawawala na meaning. Pagdating sa pinakadulo, parang nanganak na or nabinyagan or so forth and so on. So masyado tayo minsan we are quick to judge. Okay, quick to have conclusion. Or even, kapag ganito nangyari, eto na yun. Eto na ibig sabihin. 6, denying faults in one's own thinking. So challenging ang critical thinking because critical thinking asks us to, also think that we might be wrong, that we can be wrong, that maybe we are wrong ourselves. And lastly, for her, placing weight on insignificant details. Kapag hindi na siya importante at nag-dwell tayo doon, it is not critical thinking. So para sa kanya, ano daw ang critical thinking? Questioning others' thinking. We have to question the thinking of others. We don't just accept, we also think about and question. Second, embracing others' thinking. Kung tama at may point siya, bakit hindi natin yakapin? Yung the way that she or he is trying to tell us, itong truth na ito. And emulating others' thinking. We're not just simply mimicking, we are emulating. Nakikita na nagkakaroon ng effect sa atin. Fourth, the willingness to be wrong. Na maaaring magkamali din tayo. Na hindi tayo perfect. I think maganda nga na dun tayo magsimula sa critical thinking na hindi tama, baka hindi tama yung ating perspective. Next, question also one's own thinking. So, hindi na natin kina-question ng thinking natin sa iba, tinitingnan din natin ang sarili natin. We're trying to think about, tama ba yung pag-iisip ko? 6, putting logic before bias. Putting logic before bias. So, ano nung mas narapan bago yung mga kinikilingan natin? And lastly, recognize contradiction because there will be contradiction when we do critical thinking. There will be contradiction. Yung mga pinaniniwalaan natin minsan at pinaniniwala ay maaaring hindi tugma. So, just to take note, critical thinking is not just be critical. Kasi minsan, yung mindset natin na critical thinking, kailangan critical ako sa lahat ng bagay. Sinasabi, hindi lang yun ang critical thinking. Yes, it is critical thinking when you try to look into the argument, when you try to look at the perspective, the biases, and so forth and so on. Tama yun. Pero hindi lang yun ang kabuuan ng critical thinking. To be critical, you have to be creative as well. So, kasama ang problem solving. Sabi nga nila nung iba, pag critical thinking, hindi ka pwede maging creative. But no, actually, you can be creative. You can be more creative when you are critical because you try to find solutions to problems. Reflective, the metacognition. Mahalaga yung reflection. So, pagiging critical, hindi lang nung critical ka dahil maaring hindi tama to o tama ito, kung anong tama. Pero ikaw rin mismo nag-reflect, ano ba ang totoong tama? At paano itong tamang ito makaka-apekto sa buhay ko o sa buhay ng ibang tao. And then, adaptive, the openness to change. Minsan doon tayo nahihirapan sa pagtanggap ng change, diba? Sa pagtanggap ng mga pagbabago sa buhay natin. And many of us are guilty of that. Diba? Parang, marami sa atin, we shun away. Ngayong taon na to, we have COVID. Baka pwedeng, huwag na lang tayo mag-aral. O kaya, hindi na-ensure yung learning ng mga bata. So, baka pwedeng wag na lang tayo magturo. O kaya, di ba, hindi talaga natin tinignan yung possibility that there can be truth, there can be a good result to those changes. Pero pag critical ka, you're creative, you're effective, and you're adaptive. You adapt. You're open to change. So now we look into bakit natin kailangan ng critical thinking. Tapos tinignan natin ano ng mga challenges critical thinking. And then we also look at paano or natin dapat tingnan ang critical thinking. So ngayon, tingnan natin paano natin gagawin. Paano tayo magiging critical thinkers? Okay. In one of the articles that I read, ay binigay yung author na walong way to discuss or to describe ano isang critical thinker. Ang critical thinker daw is does already have the intellectual humility. So again, humble, na hindi lahat ng knowledge ay nasa kanya. Hindi lahat ng kaalaman ay nasa kanya. Nandun rin yung kanyang curiosity. Gusto niya malaman, bakit? Pag tingnan natin how different is that to someone who is very lazy na ayoko na isipin na. Curiosity. Tinitingnan niya, bakit kaya? Ano kayang pwede? Ano kayang nangyayari? Bakit kaya ganitong perspective niya? So you became curious. Third, you're self-aware. Again, awareness, reflection. Self-reflection. A critical thinker also is objective, trying to be objective and not go with, again, the next one, understand the biases. Because we understand our biases. Naiintindihan natin na baka bias ako kasi ito nung pinaniniwalaan. Critical thinkers also are compassionate. They have compassion and empathy towards others. So, hindi agad judgmental. Basta one of the segment in Ibulaga, which we always, ako personally and my family always try to watch is yung bawal judgmental. Kasi minsan, judgmental tayo, diba? May mga biases tayo. And pag may mga nakita tayo, minsan hindi tayo empathetic or hindi tayo compassionate. Diba? We take pity or we sympathize, but we are not empathizing. But a critical thinker empathizes on how to empathize. Second to the last, willingness to challenge the status quo. Ito nung isa sa pinaka-challenging na description ng pagiging critical thinker. Willingness to challenge the status quo. Marami sa atin, ayaw na natin i-challenge yung status quo. We just go with the flow, diba? We just go with the flow. And of course, we creative thinkers din ang mga critical thinkers. Creative thinkers. So makikita natin, ito yung profile ng isang critical thinker. Of course, marami pa tayong pwedeng ilagay. Pero I just would like to highlight 8 of them. So paano natin gagawin? So how can we be more critical? Especially also for our students. Okay, first is let's challenge them to formulate questions, their own questions. And even us, when we ask them questions. It always starts with the question. It always starts with the question. So what are we looking for? Bakit ba natin ito gustong tignan? Ano ba yung gusto natin marating? Ano ba yung gusto natin puntahan? That will be the starting point of critical thinking. Because if we don't have that question, wala tayong tanong na gano'n, we will never proceed to what we want to or where we want to go. And the challenge is to go beyond the what. Let's ask our students how and why. I always remember one of my students, whenever I will talk to him, parating tanong niya sa akin, "Sir, bakit parating may why?" Bakit parating may why? Pag nagtanong kayo, sir, parating may kasunod na why. Bakit? Di ba, bakit? Because, hindi lang pwedeng what lang. Kasi, that's so, masyado siyang hindi natin nilalaliman yung understanding natin sa bagay na yun. And even us, we don't subject ourselves to questioning kung hanggang what lang tayo. So we have to ask ourselves, we have to ask our students, how? Why? Okay? After that, let's try to gather information. Ito yung mahalaga. So after nating malaman yung mga bagay-bagay, ang gusto nating malaman. Yes po.
Ayan. O, tanong natin, why? Bakit biglang pumasok si Sir John?
Why? Sige.
Siguro two things lang po muna before tayo magpatuloy sa ating napakamakabuluhang session this morning. Number one, let's go into a quick Q&A lang para hindi matabunan yung kanilang mga questions. Although, Sir Angelo, kung mapapansin mo yung ating comment section, ang dami talagang ganap. Ang daming sharing, ang daming pagpapatotoo sa mga share mo. So, thank you for that. Pero baka meron tayong mga pwedeng ma-highlight na questions. Antayin lang po natin yung tech team natin na maglabas ng mga questions.
Sige lang. Maganda tong time for us to ask that questions.
Ayan. Kasi bahagi yan ng di ba? Sir, bahagi ng critical thinking. Kailangan, we have to pause.
Yes, agree po.
Tanungin natin, tama ba yung pagkakaintindi ko? Baka mali? Or may iba pang paraan para maintindihan yung nasa isip ko? Ayan. Let's wait a while kung may mga lalabas tayo. Maha-highlight tayo ng mga questions.
Oo po. Kaya nga, binabasa ko nga nung magandang marami mga sharing of information nga, Sir Jamie, talaga dito. So, it's nakakatuwa naman na marami sa kanila yung nakaka-relate. Kaya nga we try, for example, yung bawal judgmental ng Bulaga. Nung mga topics doon, ang ganda kasi parang ikaw mismo, you challenge yourself to not be so biased with certain things, di ba? So, maganda, nakikita ko nga nung mga comments natin.
Ayan, so, Sir, may question tayo. There are learners who can hardly understand concepts or even instructions. How can we help them to become critical thinkers? Siguro this is very closely related to a comment that I saw earlier. Sabi niya, wag natin sigurong kalimutan na for us to be able to really focus on HOTS, kailangan ma-master natin yung lower order thinking skills.
Yes.
Sir, comment.
So tama, susundan ko si Sir Jambi doon. Of course, kaya nga di ba pag tinignan natin, higher order thinking skills sila. So, HOTS yung gusto natin marating ng mga bata. Pero, especially in the lower years, of course, you have to make sure that kahit pa paano naintindihan nila ng topics. Or, yun nga, tulad ng hardly understand concepts or even instructions. So, isang bagay, I would like to share, my son is grade 1 sa Saver. So, first time niya sa Saver, tapos first time din niya online. So, talagang challenging siya. Kasi, kumbaga, nung setup and everything. And nakikita ko minsan, yung concepts, syempre, bago. Syempre, tinuturo pa lang. Or some bagong way of doing things. For example, sa mathematics, iba yung way na tinuturo sa kanila pagdating sa paano magsosolve. Kasi merong certain way na gustong ituro sa kanila at meron siyang natutunan na dating way. So, minsan nung konseptong yon nahirapan siyang i-grasp. Pero isa sa mga na-appreciate ko dun sa habang nagbabantay ako sa anak ko, may mga times, may mga moments si teacher nag-ask siya ng reflection questions. Kaya ako, I would like to stress that hindi lang siya yung pagiging critical, it's also a way for us to invite ourselves, our students, to reflect. Paano mo ba naiintindihan? So maaring pwede tayong doon rin mag-umpisa. As we teach the concepts, after we teach the concepts, we ask them. Let's try to ask them. Okay? Ano natutunan mo? Naiintindihan mo ba? Kapag hindi mo naiintindihan, that's actually a good starting point to help them to become critical thinkers. Kasi sila mismo tinitingnan nila sa nila, ay, baka hindi ko po naintindihan. So, bakit kaya hindi naintindihan? So, doon na pwede nang maging stepping stone siya pagdating sa critical thinking.
Ayan. Thank you, sir. Ito pa, yan. What would be the basis of the morality of our action? Pang theology.
Parang challenging talaga. Pagdating po sa morality, marami kasing factor tayong tinitignan with regards to the basis of our actions. So, meron yan ngayon ituturo namin rin sa aming mga grade 10 yung how to make judgment and how to make reasonable and informed judgment. Of course, one thing na gusto namin i-highlight is yung way of thinking. Minsan kasi hindi ito nung hindi natin natitingnan na area ng morality. Minsan meron tayong mga certain way of thinking. For example, marami sa mga bata natin relativist or kumbaga meron na sila kung ano ito nung gusto ko, ito nung paniniwala ko, ito lang ang tama. So lahat ng gagawin ko tama. Kung anong gusto mong gawin, bahala ka sa buhay mo. Basta ako, ito ang tama sa akin. And you don't need to impose on anything. Second, may mga iba naman na very, sila keen dun sa kung ano nung sinabi ng authority. Ito yung sinabi ng authority. So, dapat sundin natin to. Any iteration or altercation dun sa sinabi ng authority, naku, dapat hindi natin pakinggan yan. Meron ding iba na pag tinignan natin yung mga bagay-bagay, we just accept what we want. Okay? So, parang buffet na parang the term is moral pluralism na parang tinitingnan natin, we just get what we wanted. And then, there is what we wanted our students to know, which is to become evaluatives. When we try to evaluate the situation, yun nga, I always closely relate that also to critical thinking. Na pagdating sa critical thinking, we have to evaluate. We have to look into the information. Yan, makikita natin later yan sa babalik natin sa discussion. And also, siguro, isang bagay na gusto ko rin i-share kay ma'am, one of the basis of morality of our action, sabi ng isang professor sa Ateneo, is that many times our choices is not led because of the action. Actually, it's more of our values. Kung ano nung pinapahalagahan natin. Nung action natin brought about the values that we imbibe, that we accept, that we embrace. So kung ano nung vina-value mo, yun yung magka-translate dun sa actions natin.
Ayan. Thank you very much, Sir Franco. At maraming salamat po sa mga tanong din ninyo. Kasi gaya nga ng sinabi ni Sir Angelo kanina, napakalawak nung topic natin on critical thinking. Kahit nga may 2 oras tayo, hindi 'yun sapat, 'di ba? And yung sharing ninyo, yung mga tanong ninyo, yung pagpapalitan ninyo ng mga experiences ninyo, nakakadagdag po 'yan sa kaalaman ng marami. And last question po natin, Sir Angelo. Last question for this part lang how can we help learners develop critical thinkers or to become critical thinkers if they cannot comprehend well? O yun, ito very closely related dun sa question kanina na hots and lots before the hots.
Yes. Okay. So, again, ganun pa rin, reiteration of what I've shared or what we are, nung nabanggit na ni Sir Jambi, it's good to start with the lots, especially sa younger years. Okay? Kasi doon natin ma-impose yung or maituturo sa kanila yung comprehension And hopefully, if we will be able to reach that comprehension, then we go to the hots. And again, as I go back, kung nahihirapan talaga siya ng comprehension, again, punta tayo sa reflection. Tanungin natin, saan kaya nanggagaling? So tayo rin, magtanong tayo sa sarili natin, saan kaya nanggagaling yung difficulty niya? Bakit kaya siya nagkakaroon ng difficulty in comprehending? And you can also ask the child, saan ka ba nangihirapan? That is, actually yun nga, nung gusto rin natin i-reiterate, napakalawak ng critical thinking. Pero minsan, ang critical thinking sa atin ay focus lang dun sa hots. But actually, it's not. Kasama dun ng reflection, kasama dun ng pagiging creative, kasama dun ng pagiging adaptive. So, isang way para matulungan natin, ma-develop sa mga bata, yung critical thinking is let them reflect. Let them look into themselves. Where are they coming from? Ano nung mga nahirapan sila? Or paano kaya natin sila matutulungan? In that way, they are actually already doing some critical thinking. already. So hopefully, again, let's start with the lots, yung pinaka-lower level. Kapag medyo mastery na, tsaka tayo we move forward to the HOTS. And kung talaga nahihirapan tayo, then we also advocate reflection in order for us to be able to know where the students are and what we can do to help the students.
Okay, thank you for that, Sir Angelo. Alam mo, many of the other questions are on topics that I am sure you will cover in the next part of our sharing this morning. At kung sakali man na hindi sila maging bahagi ng patuloy mong pag-share with us, we can try and address them later pagka nag-second part tayo ng ating Q&A. So again, maraming salamat po sa
Yes, sir.
questions ninyo. Ibabalik ko na po ang ating screen kay Sir Angelo. You may continue, sir.
So, babalik lang po ulit ako sa aking presentation. Sige. So, I'll ask Sir Jambi kung nakita na po ulit or loading pa rin ating, ayan, loading pa rin pa, sir, ating question, ay, nung presentation.
Sige, antayin lang natin, sir. Carousel brainstorming may be used as a strategy in critical thinking. Correct?
Yes. So, napakaraming apps. So, mamaya magta-touch ako ng mga ilang apps. Pero ito, maganda yun, nung Sir Jambi yung shinare na application. So, again, share lang po tayo ng mga application natin kung saan tayo tulong ng pagkakaroon ng critical or giving our students some ways to exercise critical thinking.
Alam mo, Sir Angelo, isa sa mga most interesting questions that I came across dun sa comment section natin, yung tinatanong niya kung una, extra difficult na to have to teach critical thinking or yung HOTS. Pangalawa, ipinasok pa natin yung element of the distance learning. Paano pa kaya kung modular? If you get to see your teacher face to face, di ba? Paano mo maituturo yung critical thinking? Paano mo ma-evaluate kung tama ba yung naituro or yung natutunan ng students? So again, very interesting questions. Hopefully we get to talk more about it in the latter part of the presentation of Sir Angelo. Kung hindi man, mag-exchange po tayo ng mga ideas natin later. Sir Angelo, we already see your presentation and you may continue, sir.
Ayan. So, thank you, Sir Jambi. So, again, babalikan ko lang po yung ating discussion. So, nandito na tayo sa how. So, paano natin ma-develop? So, kanina sa mga questions, napakarami ng mga tanong about how we will be able to be successful in integrating critical thinking. So again, it's a challenge because if you try to think about it, yun nga, kailangan yung mastery of lots, yung mga basic understanding, kailangan upuan ng bata. Okay? Pero pwede pa rin natin naman silang nagyan ng critical thinking kahit sa mga lower levels. So kanina, may binanggit about reflection. So now, we try to develop this. Again, these are some of the ways. Napakalawak nga kasi niya. So these are just some of the ways that we can actually practice critical thinking. And one way is to formulate questions. Let's encourage our students to ask questions. Diba? So, minsan, ito nung takot ng ibang mga teachers kapag nagsimula na mag-question. Some, natutuwa sila kapag maraming questions. Some, natitreten tayo kapag napakaraming questions ng mga bata. Because we feel that, okay, sometimes it is over us we have to evaluate the way we teach, but at the same time, minsan titingnan natin, tama ba ng mga tinuturo? Bakit ang daming tanong? Pero we have to look at it with a grain of salt na the formulation of questions is actually part of critical thinking because they want to know. Gusto nilang may malaman. Diba? Kaya nga nang tanong natin, what are you looking for? So, minsan, ako pag nakaka-encounter ako ng questions sa mga bata, I always say, saan kaya nanggaling yung tanong mo? Even personal, kahit sa klase, minsan, there's our questions. So, minsan, I try to answer, but afterwards, kapag may opportunity ako sa bata, I ask him personally, so, saan kaya nanggaling yung tanong mo? Kasi may pinanggagalingan yun. Okay? So, katulad ng kanina, nahihirapan siya comprehension, baka pag nagtanong siya, doon nag-resonate yung formulation ng question na doon nanggagaling siya, na hindi pala niya naiintindihan. So, gusto pala niya mas makaintindi. And that's actually a part of being critical. Kasi hindi lang niya tinanggap at bahala na. Hindi, nag-iisip rin siya. So, do not discount teachers yung questions. Minsan nakakatakot yung ibang mga questions kasi ang hihirap minsan. Lalo na sa mga higher level, lalo na sa college or senior high school or even high school level, minsan ng mga tanong nila, kasi meron na silang mga pinaniniwalaan, may mga biases sila, may mga beliefs sila. So, minsan tinatanong nila yon I always believe, not to challenge. Maybe there might be some there might be some students that will try to challenge, pero hindi naman lahat ganon. Many of them, if not most of them, would really want to know and we really want to make sense of what they are learning. Second is to gather information. So after you ask that question, invite the students to gather information. At sana, no information, hindi lang isang information. Minsan kasi, yun yung problem sa atin. Diba? When we gather things, when we try to look into things, meron lang tayong certain source. Isang source lang. Pero hindi. Dapat we are open to all sources. Pros man yan or cons. Kasi hindi natin makikita the big picture if we will not be open to everything. So, we can ask our students, how did you know this? Saan nanggaling? Ano nung information na nakuha mo? Saan mong information na nakuha to? Also, kaya siguro sila nagtatanong sa atin is because they want to seek an advice or ask questions. Because for them, for some children, for many children, or if not all children, all students, at one point, tinitingnan nila ang teachers nila as experts of life. Not only of the subject matter, but life itself. Kasi we have been there. Ang galing na tayo. Pag tinitignan ng experience ko, marami sa mga tanong ng mga bata, mas interested sila in terms of personal things. Okay? More than the subject matter. Kasi baka nakikita nila, ito na lang ang pinagdaanan ni sir. So baka kapag nagtanong ako, mas magkakaroon ako ng linaw. And then, tandaan natin, again, the information overload of the internet, napakadami ng information. Diba? Isang click lang yan. Type ka lang ng something sa Google, enter mo, ang dami mo ng information. Sobrang dami nga, hindi na natin lahat mag-gather. Pero kailangan pa natin mag-gather ng information. Kaya mahalaga, no, access for information, at the same time, the help and assistance of an expert, of someone who knows. At ang ayaw natin is, ang tatanungin ng mga bata ay yung mga kapwa bata lang nila in terms of big issues. That's why we are there, okay, to help them as well, even they gather information. The next one is to evaluate the information. So after nyo mag-gather yung information, of course, try to evaluate. Saan ba kayo nanggagaling? Ano yung mga concepts na pinagtuunan mo ng pansin? Tandaan natin, kailangan makita rin natin yung importance. Kapag hindi importante nung konsepto, huwag natin masyadong pagtuunan ng pansin. Kasi baka may mas mahalaga pa para masagutan o mai-address natin yung inquiry. Then, tingnan rin natin mga assumptions natin. Ano ba nung mga pinaniniwalaan mo na? Diba? Ano yung intention mo? Minsan, doon tayo nagkakada sa intention. So, bakit mo ba gusto talagang malaman? Ano ba talaga nung gusto mong parating? Tapos, the values. Ano nung values natin? Ano nung mga pinahalagahan natin? Kasi it will matter pagdating sa ating judgment, pagdating sa critical thinking. Kasi titignan natin yung mga bagay na yan. Then, interpretation. How do we interpret things? Paano ba natin tinitignan yung mga bagay-bagay? And then, the biases that we have. So, hindi lang siya natatapos sa gather, okay, marami na akong information na nakalap. Okay, dami ko ng pwedeng source ng aking judgment. Pero, kailangan pa natin evaluate yung information. Isa-isahin natin. Baka kasi mamaya, one-sided yung ating information. Diba? Baka puro sa affirmative lang, wala do sa negative. At dangerous yun. Kasi, ibig sabihin, hindi tayo very open. Again, that's also a way for us to not be critical kapag hindi tayo open doon. Next, consider implications. Aside from looking into yung mga bagay-bagay na nag-gather natin, tignan din natin to look forward. Kasi dapat may foresight. Ano yung effects kaya pag pinili ko to? Kasi tandaan natin, mga teachers, once we choose something, okay, sometimes when we choose something, we have to not choose others. So yun ang challenge. Baka pag pinili na natin isang bagay, minsan, we take for granted the other things. Kasi ito na nung pinili mo. So, kailangan tingnan mo lahat ng effects and consequence. But it should not limit you. Kasi, again, napakarami. You already gathered the information. You already evaluate the information. Then, try to consider the implication. Ano ba ang consequence nito pag pinili ko to? Diba? Sa mga bata, kapag ang pinili ng mga bata ay blended learning, for example, diba? Ano kaya na maging effects nito sa mga bata? Kapag ang modality natin ay distance talaga, remote learning, ano kaya magiging effects at consequences nito? Kasi when we look into the consequences and the effects, then we will have a more informed decision. And then, explore others' perspective. Mahalaga to, teachers, kasi minsan, kailangan, or hindi lang minsan madalas, or in all things, kailangan natin i-explore, tignan rin ng perspective ng ibang tao. Kasi marami nasa ibang konteksto nila. Katulad nitong famous picture na to. Diba? The blind men were asked to touch the elephant, but they are touching different things, different parts of the elephant. Not necessarily that they're wrong when they say, of course, yung mga interpretation nila is mali kasi ito yung what they're asked to is it is an elephant that they are trying to figure out. Pero since they are blind, they have a different perspective. Kung ikaw ay nakahawak sa tenga, para sa iyo pamaypay yung Ikaw sa kanyang pangapaa, kala mo isang tree. Or kung ikaw ay nasa buntot, rope siya. Okay? So tignan natin ng perspective, lahat ng perspective. Evaluate our choices in order for us to have an evaluated choice and a more informed decision. So, kailangan natin tignan yung perspective. Hindi lang isang side. So, lahat ng perspective. At minsan, ito ng challenge natin kasi kapag yung perspective ay malayo or against doon sa paniniwala natin. Pero, it still invites us to look into that. Kasi if we want to be really critical about things, we have to also look into saan sila nanggagaling. And then, I add here reflect. Kasi we don't just want them to be very critical. We want them also to know and reflect why are they critical. What happens during this critical analysis or this critical thinking. We need to reflect. Kailangan natin tignan saan ba tayo nangyayari. Okay? So, maybe to end yung concept natin ng critical thinking, I would like to reiterate what Alvin Toffler have shared and have mentioned. Madalas to naririnig, madalas ko to nakikita sa mga sharing. Pero sabi nga nila, diba? The illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. Okay? So, hindi na lang mahalaga pa rin na magbasa at magsulat. Pero hindi na yun nung masasabi mo na kapag marunong ka magbasa at magsulat, kaya mo na, especially in the 21st century. Because the 21st century is a VUCA world. So we need to learn things. That's why we are doing critical thinking. We need to be critical about what we're learning. We need to unlearn what we supposed to be unlearning, especially if those learning will not be of help sa ating paglago. And we have to relearn. There are certain things that we have to relearn. Kailangan nating matutunan. Kailangan ulit nating matutunan. And the 4Cs that we are offering this September are critical skills, competencies for us to be able to reach, okay, and be ready for the 21st century. So, si Sir Franco na-discuss ng collaboration, the importance of collaboration. So, hindi na lang one-man team or all by myself. You should know how to work with different people. And working with other people, okay, I was listening to Sir Franco dun sa kanyang sharing about collaboration. Minsan, we're afraid, diba, of asking them to group into certain people that they will not be able to work with. Okay? But ako, sa tingin ko, we also have to be open at that point, at some point. Because in reality, life will bring us to choices, to situations that we don't like. And we have to be ready about that. And then critical thinking, it asks us to think critically. Ano ba nung mga information na kukuha natin? Ano ba yung truth na kukuha natin? Then you have creativity. Dahil minsan hindi na lang isang way, di ba, of presenting things, of doing things. Okay? Hindi na siya black and white. There are many gray areas already. And many times in those gray areas, there is truth to that. We can still provide what we need to provide. So, tignan natin mabuti. Okay? And then, how we will be able to communicate that to others. So again, we have to learn, unlearn, relearn. Okay? And so, paano natin pa siya mas mapapaigting ng critical thinking? Okay? So, tapos ng Q&A natin, mamaya na ulit ng Q&A. So, again, nandito tayo sa modality. So, we have this modalities of distance learning. So, online distance learning, you have the remote learning, and you have the remote studies. Okay? So, online distance learning, ito yung merong, as explained by Sir Franco, ito yung with the aid of the internet, gadget, and you have online learning. Then you have the remote learning, which somehow mix up and the blend, or not mix up, but blended learning na may mga times na we will be having opportunities for online learning, but there are times also that they will be doing work, okay, on their own, or they will be gathering it on their own. And then, of course, remote study na talagang hindi tayo naging modular, kumbaga. So, modular. So, paano natin mapapaigting yung critical thinking? Sabi nga ni Sir Jambi kanina sa discussion, mahirap siya mapakita. Challenging siyang mapakita. Pero hindi siya imposible. Challenging siyang makita. Especially if our modality is towards the printed modular. Pero hindi siya imposible. That's what I can assure you. So, I'll try my best. Again, nakikita ko sa chat box, napakaraming ideas. So, ituloy lang natin ng mga ideas natin. Kasi, sabi nga, we're kaagapay, we're helping each other learn. Okay? Pero ito nung mga bagay na nagawa ko at tinatry kong gawin sa online distance learning, and sometimes it will be applicable also to remote learning and even to remote studies. So, first is the discussion board. Paano natin mapapaigting yung critical thinking? Let them discuss. Okay? And mahalaga yung comments. So, I wrote down here, or mga application na pwedeng gamitin. Of course, the Jamboard, nandyan. Si Google Classroom, pwede nga siyang gamitin as a discussion board. Using comments, marami kang pwedeng makuha doon. And, of course, Padlet. Okay? So, discussion board, let them discuss. If you have a question, post a question, and then ask them to react. In our grade 10 now, some of our grade 10, what we even ask them is to comment on their classmates' answers. And in that way, makikita nyo nung thinking nila, if they agree, disagree, if they are, if meron pa silang point na gustong erase or meron silang mga question, this is a good opportunity for us to have a discussion. Okay? Discussion board. Okay? So, maaari nating gawin to in our online distance or even in blended learning. So, mag-post ka ng question and then from there, okay, pwedeng magsagot yung mga bata sa question. And then, pwede mo sila ipa-comment dun sa mga sagot ng classmate nila. And then, the interaction, okay, starts. And then, critical thinking. Makikita nyo na yung critical thinking, somehow, na-bring about nila yon sa kanilang discussion. Kasi, makikita mo naman kung ang comment ng bata is just a comment of just agreeing or meron siyang dinadagdag dun sa idea or meron siyang mga questions dun sa idea. So, challenge natin sila to have that discussion board to really comment on their classmates. Okay? Second, mind mapping. Okay, we can also do mind mapping or other maps. One is also empathy map, where we can look into and ask them to look at the perspective of others. Okay, so mind map, marami tayong mind map tools. Okay, in Google, marami silang ino-offer na mind map tools, but there are other applications na pwede rin natin itap. So, you can do this mind mapping online. Pwede siyang gawin. Or offline, pwede rin. And even remote learning or remote studies, you can ask them to just set the mood, just set the situation, and let them immerse in that. Isa sa mga nakikita kong maganda is aside from the mind mapping, is the empathy map. Okay, later, I have an example of the empathy map. Yung empathy map, it asks them to look into the perspective of the person. You can do it printed actually. So sa online, pwede mo siyang gawin, ilagay mo siya sa Google Slides. Pwede. So makakapag-interact na ng mga bata. Okay? In remote studies, in our modules, pwede rin tayo maglagay nun ng mind map or ng empathy map. Kasi nandun na sa empathy map yung mga questions. Tapos lalagyan lang natin ng perspective. Or sila mismo, papiliin natin ng perspective. Pwedeng yung perspective nila, pwedeng yung perspective ng ibang tao. Okay? So, tignan nila. Pwedeng, parang, you're asking them to put their, put the shoes of the other. So, be in the shoes of the other. So, that's a good example of how we can practice critical thinking. Sa online, pwede rin tayo mag-breakout rooms. Okay? So, ang breakout rooms, hindi lang siya pang groupings. Actually, in the breakout rooms, you can have discussion as well. Okay? Isa sa mga pinaplano nga namin sa Xavier, sa grade 10 in particular, I'm teaching grade 10, is we'll ask them to have a case analysis. Iba-ibang cases, tapos i-breakout room namin sila. Tapos, from there, they discuss. So, pwedeng umupo ka doon sa breakout room, makinig ka sa kanila, or tanungin mo sila. And then, doon makikita natin nung thinking nila, paano sila mag-isip. Or, after the breakout room, let them present by group, one by one, or let them screen share, tapos pakita kung ano nung nagawa nila. And then, you ask questions. So, hindi lang dapat tayong makita na asynchronous activity, dapat ganito lang. So, you can be creative with the use of that. Sa modular, medyo challenging siya. Sorry, I'll just drink water po. Okay. So, sa breakout room, again, challenging siya pagdating sa modular. Kasi nga, parang paano mo sila i-group? Diba? Paano sila i-put together? Okay? But it's possible. Okay? Okay, sorry about that. Next is document analysis or hyperdocs. What you can do sa online, sa distance learning, ask them to read an article, or you can put the article in Google Documents or sa Google Slide. Let them highlight. Let them highlight the important things. Let them add comments to that. Okay? So, pwede. So, when you do document analysis, okay, pwede siyang gawin using these tools. Sa sa remote learning, if you printed a particular reading, a particular topic, tapos may content siya, you can ask them to highlight. Yun na nakikita ko, highlight the important details, okay, that you see in the text. Okay? Tapos write your comments. Di ba minsan, I remember kapag minsan nag-aaral tayo, or nung nag-aaral pa tayo, I don't know if you're doing that. Ako po, ginawa ko yun eh. So habang nag-aaral, di ba may mga notes, tapos minsan hina-highlight natin ng mga notes. Tapos nilalagyan natin ng mga certain notes natin. So that could be a possible way for us to see critical thinking or to practice critical thinking to our students. Okay? Or hyperdocs. Yan. Sa Google Documents or even in slides, you can do hyperdocs. So online and the blended. Online learning. Online distance learning. So, dun na sa document, nandun na yung text and nandun yung mga links. Pwede yon. So, bibigay mo lang yung document tapos naka-hyperlink na nung mga details. If you want them to go a particular site, if you want them to watch a particular video, pwede mo nang ilagay doon. So, in that sense, tapos bigyan mo ng questions sa dulo, bigyan mo sila ng link kung saan nila pwede sagutan or a space where they can write it down, then you will see. Okay, that's part of critical thinking because they're analyzing, they're looking into the document. Okay? Then, of course, you can have interactive lessons. Okay, I put there Edpuzzle. If you're familiar with it, so sa Edpuzzle, you can cut yung video, tapos insert questions. And that is a good way for you to be able to check understanding and for them to be critical about what they are thinking. So, pwede yon. Canva, I think marami sa atin familiar with Canva. Nakikita ko yan sa marami sa mga teachers natin ngayon. They're fond of using Canva. But Canva is not just for design, actually. You can actually create a lesson out of it. So in creating lessons, you can be very interactive. And then I put there quizzes. Quizzes is normally, pag tinitingnan natin si quizzes, for formative assessment. But recently, they released an update where you can actually use quizzes for your lesson. So for those who are doing online distance learning, pwede ka na mag-create ng interactive lesson using quizzes. So in that sense, pwede ka nang maglagay ng video, mag-post ng mga questions, at dun pa lang sasagot na sila. Tapos pwede mo rin sila i-check their understanding with the quizzes format. So marami kang pwedeng gawin with interactive lessons to engage students to be more critical about it. Then, of course, blogging. So, yung mga blogs, okay, it's a way for us to see how they are thinking about certain things. So, kung meron tayong mga gustong ipa-analyze sa kanila, pa-evaluate ng mga documents, and then we ask them to summarize it, to share their insights, their understanding on it, blogging can be a way. So, of course, you have the other sites, but here we have Google Sites, we have blogs, we have Wix or WordPress where they can do their blogging. Kung hindi naman sa blogging, pwede rin natin pasulat yan sa notebooks nila or sa mga paper nila. So again, these are some of the ways that we can actually make them, one, think more about the things that they are thinking, at the same time, create their own content, which is also a form of critical thinking. Of course, we have, I think, marami naman sa atin aware of the problem-based learning. Okay, the problem-based learning. So, you can do this through the online distance learning. You can also do it in blended learning. But I think you can also even extend that to sa ating mga modules. So, kailangan lang ma-prepare sila on certain steps. Why? Kasi pag tinignan natin ng mga steps ng problem-based learning, makikita natin na applicable siya. Pwede natin siyang gamitin, even in their own context. Okay? So, problem-based learning, it is a project over a period of time that engages them to a real-world problem. So, pwede natin agad i-connect yung real-world problems and have complex question or answer a complex question. So, it develops the deep content knowledge as well as critical thinking, creativity, communication. Okay? So, makikita natin yan. in a more authentic project manner. So, I know in the public, parang performance tasks yan, parang performance. Pero ito mas bigger kasi you can even integrate other subject matters in the PBL work. And pag tinignan natin yan, so this starts with the challenging problem. So, let's start with a question. You can start with a particular situation. So, pwede yun. So, once we have the question, okay, they can have the sustained inquiry. Ano ng mga tanong nila? And again, asking questions are important in critical thinking. Kasi aside from the question that they will have, that we give them, sustained inquiry also ask them to pose other questions related to that. And makikita nyo nung thinking agad nila doon. Authenticity, because it's a real world problem in a real world context. So hopefully that would spark their interest. Kasi pwede natin i-relate to mga nangyayari. For example, the COVID-19, the pandemic, so forth and so on. So pwede natin ilagay, gawing authentic yung ating assessment. So even in remote and even in online distance learning. Then after that, the student voice and choice, because they are to make some decisions about the project, including how they will work and how will they create. So in that, student agency will help us understand that they are doing critical thinking. Kasi sila mismo nag-iisip ng gagawin nila. Then you have the reflection. Again, I always reiterate, reflection. Hindi lang, ang critical thinking is not only about the HOTS, it's also about what we have learned, okay, doing the HOTS and doing and undergoing the content. So reflection is an important process as well in PBL. And then, of course, critique and revision. Ito, mahihirapan lang dito with regards to kapag distance learn, remote and printed yung copy. Kasi nung critique and revision, it will be done at the latter part kapag nakuha na ni teacher yung module from the student. Kaya, I would advise, kung gusto natin mag-push through sa PBL natin, PBL work, what we can do is that we chunk also, or we scaffold yung ating mga tasks sa PBL, so that unti-unti ng mga batang binubuo. At pwede rin kayo magkaroon ng critique and revision, balikan ng mga process, feedback. Kasi mahalaga yung feedback sa mga bata. And then, make the project public. Although hindi naman kailangan na i-post nila sa Facebook or anything, but even just making it public in a way that will be safe for the students, then it will make more sense to them kasi mas mapapakita yung gawa nila is hindi lang siya ginawa dahil completion ng project, but it is done as an effort really to show and to ask feedback from other people. I remember nung ginagawa ito sa Xavier, napakaraming PBL na ginawa namin sa Xavier. But isa sa mga ginawa namin sa grade 10 is we ask our students to go to their barangays and to check on ano mga pwede nilang gawin. So it's a collaboration of science, of math, in having a sustainable place, a sustainable world, a sustainable city, a sustainable barangay. And then afterwards, present ng mga bata yung gawa nila sa mga public officials, mga barangay officials. And so, doon pa lang nakikita natin ng interaction, nakikita natin na yung project nila hindi lang requirement sa school, but something na pwedeng gawin at bibigay sa mga taong nangangailangan. So, we can do PBL actually. So, problem-based learning as a way for us to integrate and ask them to do critical thinking. Another, ito minsan na natin, especially if some of us are looking into online distance learning and even blended learning. I don't know kasi pagdating sa video, sa TV and radio, pero I think pwede natin tignan nung concept ng YouTube or yung concept ng mga online videos. Okay? In YouTube, napakaraming mga site. You just have to curate, you just have to look into napakaraming information, magagandang information, challenging information that we can look into para mas ma-hone natin yung critical thinking ng mga bata. Okay, so you have the Edutopia, you have the TED Ed Talks, you have Crash Course, especially nung explanation nila, pwede nyo ipakritik sa mga bata yun kung nag-agree sila or you ask them questions. You have Vox, you have Jubilee, you have Soul Pancake. Okay, there are many ways. So, kailangan nating itignan mabuti yung content. So, I would like to share two na madalas kong ginagamit sa klase. This is from Jubilee. Ito, middle ground. Ang ginagawa ng middle ground, although it's a US-based YouTube company, but ang gusto ko sa middle ground is they invite people, the pros and the cons to a particular topic. And then they talk. Ganda kasi kita mo ng perspective eh. Minsan, alam mo, one of my realization in using Jubilee and in watching Jubilee, minsan ang disagreements nanggagaling dahil hindi nagkakarinigan at hindi nagkakaintindihan yung mga tao. Pero when you ask them to sit down and talk and really open themselves and be critical about it, about their stance, kita mo nung interaction, kita mo nung perspective. Another one is spectrum. Ito naman, pare-pareho yung paniniwala, pero makikita mo nung pagkakaiba-iba. At minsan magandang gawin niyo sa mga bata. Pwede natin gawin yan online. Pwede natin gawin yan in a distance learning na may issue tayo, tapos let them choose a side. Do they agree? Strongly agree ba sila? O di disagree lang? O di somewhat disagree, somewhat agree? So, spectrum. Makita natin na kahit pareho ng paniniwala nila sa isang issue, hindi ibig sabihin pare-pareho sila ng understanding on that. Marami pa rin. So, makita natin ng critical thinking nila. And we can have it on our own topics as well. Okay? Another thing that I would like to share, ito, napakaganda nito, critical, visible thinking routines. Ito pwede siya hindi lang sa online distance learning, pwede rin siya kahit printed. Okay? So, this visible thinking routines is developed by Harvard Project Zero to assist us, teachers, and even for students to be more flexible and sharing in their own thinking. So, makita natin yung thinking ng mga bata. Some examples of this, babalik ko lang. Yeah, I used to think, now I think. Okay? So, makita natin kung nagbago ba ng pag-iisip ng bata. See, think, wonder. You ask them to watch a video, you ask them to read or look at the pictures. They ask, they think about, and then they wonder. Okay? They can also do headlines. They can also do claim support question. So, napakaraming pwedeng gawin para mas ma-integrate, makita natin yung critical thinking ng mga bata through this visible thinking routines. At pwede siyang printed. May mga way tayo, may mga parang not only formats, but also mga PDF files na naka-assign na, naka-look into na ganyan. See, think, wonder. So, every lesson, you can ask them to, I used to think, now I think. Or, you can ask them to do certain see, think, wonder. So, pwede natin i-print yan. Pwede natin gawin din yan on the modality of the, even if it's printed modules. So, pwede siyang gawin. Ito, gusto ko tayo share sa inyo. Ito, nakita ko lang to this year. When we ask our students to take notes, yung madalas, nagno-notes lang sila. So, sulat sila kung ano na nakikita nila sa screen, sulat sila. Ito, isang way of note-taking where we can actually ask them to be more critical of what they're taking notes. Kasi minsan, di ba sa note-taking, sinusulat mo lang kung ano yung mga ideas, yung mga concepts, and so forth and so on. Di ba? Minsan ganun lang eh. Pero, here, nagsasuggest siya ng other things, which is to create your own notes. What I mean by creating notes? So, if you have your notes here, if you have the notes that you get, let them ask those questions, 3 questions. How can I use these notes? Let them answer that. Okay, paano ko siya magagamit? Saan ko ba magagamit yung concept of, let's say, gravity? Saan kaya ko siya magagamit? Second question, why must I use it? Bakit ko kaya kailangan gamitin itong concept? And then, third question is, when will I use this? So, the other side of the notes. So, pwede i-divide yung notebook sa dalawang half. So, one half is for the notes. Okay, so sa online, pwede siya. So, kung may mga notes kayo, tapos yung pa-copy sa kanila. And then, the other half, pwede niyong paggawa to. So, after your note-taking, please answer this. Please look into this. Saan mo gagamitin yan? Bakit gagamitin mo yan? At kailan mo siya gagamitin? So, in that particular way, you'll be able to check also their understanding, check also their thinking, critical thinking. And then the last one, which is, I always advocate on this, is journaling. Okay, journaling. Ito, pwede itong gawin, teacher, kahit on any modality. Again, journaling is a way for us, a way for the students to be critical with what is happening to them, their feelings, their choices, even the way they're content. So later, share ko rin in a reflection, there are 3 kinds of reflection. So hindi lang siya puro feelings and everything. Pwede mo rin, pati ng mga concepts, pwede rin siyang maging reflection part. Okay? So sa journaling, you can do it online. Sa amin, ang ginagawa namin, we utilize CISO, a free application where you can ask them to write down, or even in other ways. Pwede silang mag-drawing, pwede silang mag-video, pwede silang maglagay ng photo, and then they share their insight. So napakarami. You can also create your own activities at doon nyo ilalagay yung mga questions yun at sasagutan nila yon. So pwede yon. If you want naman, video format. Kasi minsan, di ba, pagsusulat, madali lang siyang, minsan sa mga teachers, para malaman mo kung authentic ba talaga ng bata. Minsan magandang tignan siya sa mata, tignan yung kanyang pagsasalita, or listen to how he or she says things. Flipgrid is a good way for us to be able to gauge their understanding or their reflection or their insights, critical thinking as well. So here, video naman ang gagamitin. So, no audio and video, pwede yon. And then there are certain functions na kung saan, kung gusto mo ikaw lang makakakita at hindi makikita ng classmates, or gusto mong makita ng classmates, tapos if they agree, disagree, so pwede rin siyang maging discussion board later on. For those naman na hindi online, you can utilize notebooks or sheet of paper and ask them to reflect, journaling. Ako, I appreciate always yung mga bata na talagang nagsusulat. Kasi nakita mo effort at nakikita mo ng sincerity. Okay? Nakikita mo, sinasabi ko nga sa mga bata ko, ng mga students ko, na minsan sa mga sulat nila, nararamdaman ko, sa mga sinulat nila, nararamdaman ko kung authentic ba sila sa sinasabi nila o hindi. O binubola na lang nila. So, makita natin, journaling is a way for us, if we have imbibed that to our students, if we let them look into journaling, then maganda siyang way of sharing and doing critical thinking. So, pwede siya kahit notebook lang. You just have to put ng questions sa modules ninyo. Then, pwede silang sumagot in their notebooks. And then, they can also pass that to you. So, makita natin, even in modular, pwede pa rin sila mag-journal. Then, of course, let them have this particular way of sharing their insights. Okay? So, nabanggit na natin kanina yung blogging, writing it down. So, in an online business, pwede nyo silang gawin o paggawan ng mga blogs. Pwede. So, ako, ayan, I'm sharing my blog. So, many of you have already seen this, or many of you have already read through them. So, thank you sa mga nagbasa. So, every now and then, I try my best to share my insights, my thoughts doon sa my insight job na aking blog. And then recently, kung nakikita nyo, so those who are following of our page, of course, makikita nyo to, I have this personal project where I try to do short reflections, short insights in a Tanaga form. Okay, so Tanaga. So, 4 lines lang siya with 7 syllables. Tapos yun na yan. So, dun, nata-challenge yung creativity, nata-challenge yung critical thinking ko. Kasi in those ways, I have to think about not only the concept, the content, but also how will I be relating. So, pwede natin paggawa ito rin sa mga bata. Okay? So, these are just some of ways na pwede nating i-tap para mas makita natin yung critical thinking nila. Of course, you have the mind map, okay? And then you have, ito na sinasabi ko kanina, empathy map. Okay? So you can print this one, empathy map, may mga templates yan sa online, and then, or you can create your own, and then let them have a position of that particular person. So sector, pwedeng poor, pwedeng prisoners, pwedeng urban poor, or any situation, or kahit tao, specific na tao pwede. So, ano kaya nararamdaman nila? Ano nakikita nila? Ano nung gusto nilang sabihin? Ano naririnig nila? Ano nung mga pains and gains nila? So, these are just some ways na pwede natin mas makita ng critical thinking nila. At again, the reflection, I just want to reiterate, reflection, of course, what we use is, especially in CLE, in Christian Life Education, sa amin, ninagamit namin yan as sa experience and the feelings and thoughts. But reflections can be conceptual, pwedeng concepts. Pwedeng concepts. So, ano na natutunan nila? Yun nga, kaya natutuwa ko dun sa, I shared kanina dun sa question and answer, natutuwa ko dun sa anak ko na nag-undergo ng online distance learning. Kasi, even after ng concepts, minsan tinatanong sila ng teacher, yung reflection part na ano nung natutunan, ano nung favorite mo na naging way of solving this? Or bakit ba kailangan nating mag-solve? So, minsan, dun pa lang, magkakaroon na kayo ng discussion, dun pa lang makikita mo na agad ng critical thinking na bata. Then you have the metacognitive, which is to think about thinking, and then, of course, the personal. Ang mahalaga is to give them opportunities to reflect because that's a way for us to gauge them to think critically. And then, of course, yan, just share yung mga samples lang. So, journals, you can do journal notebooks, katulad ng namin, or you can do online. Then you can also have discussion boards. So, these are just some ways. I know, I was looking into yung mga comments ninyo, napakadaming ways on how we can actually utilize critical thinking. It's just a matter of putting it in a proper perspective, putting or giving them opportunity to think critically. Okay? So, wag po tayong matakot na just bigay lang natin sa mga bata yung kaalaman. Let us challenge them also to think, okay, of how they're thinking, to share their insights, their thoughts, okay? And we might be surprised, okay? We might be surprised because napakadaming ways na pwede natin itap yung critical thinking even in this time of the pandemic. Okay? So, yun po ng aking sharing on critical thinking. So, hopefully po, marami po tayong natutunan, marami po ako naibahagi. Sana nakapagbahagi po, nakatulong ako sa inyo in how you will be able to design critical thinking and some thoughts on critical thinking. But again, nakita ko po sa ating feed, napakadami nating pwedeng i-share. So, share lang po natin sa bawat isa yung critical thinking. Kasi, mahalaga po ito sa mundo natin at sa panahon natin ngayon.
Ayan. Oh, and
hello,
so,
Sir Jambi.
Sir, nakamute tayo, sir.
Yes, andito na.
Sir Jambi, natawala ako dun sa huling statement ni Sir Angelo. Yung
nga,
sana
nakamute
kung may
na.
napulot tayo kahit konti. Sir Angelo, siksik, liglig at umaapaw po yung napulot namin. Kahit ako po, no, ang sarap nanonood ako nung presentation niya. Pero siyempre, mas active ako sa chat. Sabi ko, lipat na ako sa chat. Sobrang sarap kausap ng mga teachers natin.
Sobrang active po kaya sa chat.
Parang naka 100 or 200 replies na yata ako sa chat natin. So maraming salamat po ulit, Sir Angelo. So go ahead, Sir Jambi, for some thoughts siguro or questions po.
Ayan. Sige, perhaps we can focus on some questions muna, Sir Angelo. Again, antayin lang natin yung tech team natin. Yes, we have a tech team na i-post yung ating questions. Ayan. Thanks, Sir Angelo Malyari. Surely, hindi na nabasa. Pero thank you daw, Sir Angelo. In fact, I encountered one comment kanina. Ang sabi ay, this daw, your presentation is perhaps the simplest way creative thinking has been presented to anyone. So maraming salamat daw for that.
Maraming salamat po.
Ayan,
Yun talaga,
sige.
Sir Jambi, to just share, ang hirap talagang i-simplify niya. Pero sabi nga natin, hindi naman siya impossible. So, hopefully, the presentation, kahit medyo simple siya, mas marami tayong na-hit na mahalagang bagay. At ang gusto kong ma-stress is yung na pwedeng magkaroon tayo ng critical thinking in so many ways. Hindi lang siya about thoughts, hindi lang siya about reflection. Napakaraming ways na pwede nating i-improve yung teaching natin at i-develop sa mga bata yung critical thinking.
Tsaka pati rin, Sir Angelo, siguro sa mga mga kaagapay natin, kailangan ma-apply din natin yung critical thinking. Yung
Yes.
even even beyond this session we're having this morning, patuloy yung curiosity mo, patuloy yung pagtatanong mo.
Yes.
Actually, kung gusto niyo pong i-check kung wait, tama ba yung sinabi sa akin yung shinare sa amin ni Sir Angelo, go ahead kasi bahagi po yan ng
Yes.
critical thinking. And sir, how would the learners think critically if they know that the passing grade in DepEd now is just 60% based on the transmutation grades? Ayan.
Ayun.
So, magkahalong need for critical thinking at yung sistema na that we're all in right now.
Yes. Challenging siya, sir, kasi number one, maraming mga, yun nga, kapag ang thinking natin kasi is towards grades, medyo mahirap anuhin yan eh, mahirap anuhin, labanan. Kasi marami talaga sa mga students natin, will just aim for the grade. Kaya siguro a challenge for us teachers is how we will be able to design our lesson in such a way that we inject critical thinking and highlight the importance of critical thinking of actually not only critical thinking of the topic of the lesson more than the grades. Kasi minsan nasa ano rin yan, minsan nasa presentation natin kung paano natin ipapakita na mahalaga yung mga bagay-bagay, yung collaboration, yung critical thinking, yung communication, yung being creative, far more beyond the grade. And hopefully, siguro ang maganda sanang gawin natin is for us to challenge the students to get away with the thinking of grades, especially now in this day of pandemic. Kasi napaka challenging, pero napaka-rich yung situation natin for us to be able to think critically. So, napakadaming nangyayari. So, marahil yun yung pwede natin i-challenge sa mga bata. Kasi kung ang challenge natin sa kanila ay basta maka 60% ka, okay na yan. Then, yun lang talaga ng aim nila. So, siguro yun nga, in the way that we design the lesson, it's challenging, but I think as we will see later on sa other two presentations this September, makikita natin the importance of the C's, the skills na mahalagang ma-develop nila sa mga bata, sa atin lahat, actually sa lahat sa atin, kailangan natin ma-develop in this 21st century. So, I hope the challenge starts with us going beyond the grades, but also focusing on what is essential in life. So, ako, yun ang una kong inano. Kaya, sabi ko, reiterate ko yun sa mga klase ko. Kaya, ginugusto ko sa kanila na mag-reflect sila kasi ito nung mas kailangan. Ito nung kailangan ng mundo natin. Yung grades nyo, grades will not define you. Kung makuha ka ng 60%, makakuha ka ng highest percent, hindi ibig sabihin, nakuha mo na ng buong concept. Pero ano ba nung mahalagang makuha mo? And the 4Cs are skills na sana makuha natin. So, ayun, siguro the challenge is really to design the lesson. Kahit ito lang nung binibigyan ni DepEd. So, I think it's more of how we will be able to make use of these skills and try to translate that dun sa ating mga lessons.
Okay, correct. And we, of course, have many other sharings from our teachers about critical thinking. Again, sige lang po, keep them coming. Meron lang po akong gustong i-address na dalawang bagay. Number one, just in case you missed the presentation of Sir Angelo or baka na-miss ninyo yung naunang presentation ni Sir Franco, wag po kayo mag-alala kasi meron po tayong tinatawag na team replay. You are to rewatch over and over again. In fact, yung mga webinars po natin, hindi lang itong dalawang nakaraan, pero pati yung mga webinars po natin from way before. Nasa YouTube channel po yan ni Sir Franco. Na makikita nyo naman po sa ating Facebook page. Tapos, kung napapansin din po ninyo yung ating tickler sa baba, ayan, dyan po ninyo mahahanap or dyan din po namin ilalagay yung mga, well, with their, of course, with their permission, yung mga presentations used from the past. Kasi napapansin ko kanina, Sir Angelo, maraming very, very interested with the presentations, with your presentation in particular. Mga gusto nilang gamitin sa studies nila, sa pag-aaral nila ng MA. So, antabayanan nyo po yan, yung sites.google.com/ ayan. Paulit-ulit naman po yan. Diyan nyo po makikita yung mga presentations that have been used from the past. Ayan. Sabi ni Miss Cecil, thank you for sharing your knowledge. My mind is now swimming with so many possibilities. Ayan. For my classes in using those different ideas to develop or enhance my students' critical thinking. Very good. Sabi din ni Miss Angelina, we need to advocate and develop new assessment methods that will not only measure what students know but also how they were able to know. Okay, correct po. Huwag po natin sukuan yung sistema. Ayan.
Yes, yes.
Huwag natin sukuan yung sistema. Pa-konti-konti, i-challenge natin yung system. Time will come. Makakahabol yung system with what is really essential. Sabi po ni Miss Joe Lanuza, thank you to Kaagapay team. Ang galing-galing po lahat na mga sinishare ninyong concepts. Maraming salamat po. Good luck po sa opening of classes sa October 5.
Oh, good luck.
Kasi hindi po porke mag-o-open na yung classes sa October 5 ay titigil na yung Kaagapay. In fact, nabasa ko kanina sa sa comment section, meron na kagad niluluto si Sir Franco na panibagong
Series na ito.
on naman, problem-based learning.
Yes, so magandang din yan, magandang usapan din yan.
Correct. Yan. Tignan pa natin kung meron pa tayong mga additional comments or questions na pwede nating sagutin or react to. Critical thinking is very important to the students' professional and lifelong learning. Totoo naman po yan. That is why most educators are in consensus to encourage this ability. Totoo po, we agree with you very much, Miss Evelyn Camara.
Saka,
Ayan.
Sir Jamie, i-add ko lang yung sa sinabi ni Ma'am. Talagang, even critical thinking is not only for all of us, for our students, but for all of us, actually. Kaya nga natutuwa ako doon sa mga comments, may nabasa ko isang comment na one of the teachers na nanonood ng webinar, even in the choosing of webinars, we have to be critical about it. So, nakakatuwa po, nakasama kami doon sa mga choices po ninyo. Kasi talagang, we have to be very critical. This is a lifelong journey. Until we are living, we need to think and to be critical about things that's happening to us.
My question po from Marge MRG, how could we develop critical thinkers in module distance learning? Ayan, may mga shinare po kanina si Sir Angelo. The modules were simplified considering those who study in the far-flung areas. Ayan, totoo naman.
Yes.
Kasi if I'm not mistaken, Sir Angelo, and this might be true for most areas, merong mga module writers eh. Tapos they prepare the modules for for everyone in that area na. Ayan. So paano kaya natin sila, Sir Angelo, matutulungan na kunyari ikaw yung guro, hindi na ikaw yung gumawa talaga ng module mo for your students. Paano ka pa kaya makakapagturo ng or what can we suggest para critical thinking pa rin yung mga estudyante natin?
So, ako, Sir Jambi, isa sa mga nakikita ko talagang very possible na pwede nating idagdag. Kasi nga, especially kung nagawa na yung module at may mga gumagawa, hopefully, of course, the teachers, have a dialogue to the module makers na sila rin mismo nagkaroon ng dialogo. And I'm hoping that the module makers also see the need for critical thinking. Pero kung sakali man talagang very simplified siya at hindi, parang nga, kasi nga, syempre, the situation that we are in, I would suggest one is to have a journal or have reflection notebooks where the students, kayo mismo, teachers, pwede kayong magdagdag. Kasi nga, ang tanda natin ng reflections, hindi lang naman siya about personal things. Pwede rin siya about the concepts. Pwede rin siya about metacognition, how they are thinking. So, the process of how they arrive to a particular answer, the process of that they have gone while doing a particular experiment, pwede nyo siyang ipasulat doon. At yun ang pwedeng way para ma-ensure natin nung critical thinking. Another is, yung isa, gusto ko talaga siya i-try, yung sa notebook, pwede yun yung ipasulat side by side sa bata, i-divide ng bata ng dalawa, yung notes niya do sa module niya, ano ng mga natutunan niya. And then, on the other side, bakit, para saan to, saan ko gagamitin to, mahalaga ba to, kailan ko siya pwedeng gamitin. In those ways, in those simple ways, makakaroon ng critical thinking. So, hopefully, it will not hinder no module natin, na module na binigay ng DepEd or kung sino man ang sumusulat. I know they do it out of the situation, but I hope also, kasi ako hindi ko pa nakita personally ng mga modules, pero kumbaga sana, alam ko naman na inisip rin nila yung mga important skills na madedevelop. And kung talagang wala siya, absent siya, or kulang siya, then we can supplement that. I guess we should not be afraid to supplement it for our students as well.
Ayan. And speaking of supplement, Sir Angelo, actually ang masasuggest ko po, ang challenge ko to our teachers, gayahin niyo po si Sir Franco tsaka si Sir Angelo. Meet the students where they are. Gawa kayo ng blog, gawa kayo ng videos. Ayan. Kasi pupuntahan po nila yung sites ninyo. Baka doon yung pwede mo supplement yung mga ibinibigay na na modules ng ating Department of Education. With the advent of technology such as vlogs, reviews on movies and books, how can we encourage our learners to develop their critical thinking? Ayan.
Yan.
Actually, yung
Maganda.
pag-raise ng question ni ma'am, parang suggestion na rin no?
Oo. Actually, mahalaga talaga yan, Sir Jambi, na kailangan talaga natin maging critical. Hindi lang sa vlogs, hindi lang sa movies, hindi lang sa maski doon sa information, social media, ang daming-daming mga sources of information. Kaya, yun nga, doon sa senior natin, one way we can do is, before we try to before we try to agree with certain things, let's open ourselves. Tingnan natin. We ask questions. Let's gather information. Let's try to assess. Let's try to talk to people. Kasi in those conversations, in those talk, in those information that you will be gathering, it will help you develop a more critical sense na hindi lang tayo agree. Siguro ang pinaka-danger kasi, as I mentioned it, Sir Jambi, yung challenge is one, pag masyadong mabilis, nung talagang agree ka lang na agree, or ayaw mo mag-agree kasi meron ka ng certain idea. So again, it's more of the opening of ourselves. So the same goes with our learners. Let's ask them to think, ano ba sa tingin nila yung blog? Nagsasabi ba siya? Bakit sa tingin nyo hindi to agreeable, hindi to dapat resourceful? So yung pagtingin sa fake news, so sa isang news, kasi minsan sa mga feeds natin sa Facebook, minsan headline lang titignan natin, or yung picture lang, natuwa tayo, like na natin. Pero pagdating doon sa information, hindi pala tama ng information. So, kailangan to be critical, we have to always try to look into ano nung sinasabi doon sa ano. So, again, as we mentioned doon sa presentation, it's really more of analyzing the information that we have in order for us to be able to achieve better choices and better judgment.
Correct. Thank you very much for that, Sir Angelo. At again, maraming salamat po sa ating mga kaagapay. Sobrang dami kong natutunan. I hope marami rin kayong natutunan ngayong umagang ito. Muli, we would like to remind you that evaluation links will be given. Ayan, pagkatapos po ng ating seminar, the first 30 minutes will be for those who joined us this morning. The link is, ayan. Okay. And yung ating pong evaluation links will of course be the basis of our preparation of the certificates. Ayan, which hopefully we are able to send to you within 7 days. Now, paano naman yung mga team replay o kaya yung medyo nahuli ng kaunti at ayan, pwede nyo na pong i-QR,
Okay.
i-scan QR code at pwede na rin po kayong pumunta agad dyan sa ano na yan, sa link na yan. But for the others, worry not, mag-open po tayo ng mga evaluation links. Pero 30 minutes po after we end this show. Okay, ano pa ba? Nangangalahati pa lang po tayo, mga kaagapay, sa ating September series of webinars. Kung na-enjoy nyo po yung collaboration ni Sir Franco and of course, yung critical thinking ni Sir Angelo, I am very excited about the
Yeah.
remaining webinars. I'm sure si Sir Angelo would agree with me. Ayan, nung nag-meeting po kami.
Mga batikan to, mga batikan. Malulupit ng mga susunod sa ano.
Sana po do not miss those next two webinars. We will see you again on Saturday and the Saturday after that. Again, hopefully all in preparation for when classes open on October 5. Pero gaya nga ng sinabi ko kanina, hindi po tayo titigil. Tuloy-tuloy pa rin po ang pag-agapay natin sa isa't isa. Okay? Maniwala man po kayo o sa hindi, yung patuloy ninyong pagsama sa amin, yung mga comments ninyo, suggestions ninyo, your questions even, nakakatulong po sa amin nila Sir Angelo, nila Sir Franco, and everyone behind Kaagapay team. Ayan. Any last words, Sir Angelo?
Siguro po ako, last words lang is, with critical thinking, we should not be afraid to subject ourselves kasi minsan yun yung challenge. To be critical, we might find ourselves in contrast with other people, in contrast with some mga thoughts na kumaga, institutional thoughts or even mga beliefs. But critical thinking should not be something that hinders us to do and find what is truthful. So for our students and even for ourselves. So sa ngayon, sa panahon ngayon, let us always try our best to practice critical thinking in the informations that we will be gathering, in the information that we're getting in different platforms. Yun lang po yung para sa akin. So,
okay. Again, maraming salamat, Sir Angelo. Ako naman po, last message to our kaagapay. Ang quick reflection ko po after ng collaboration ni Sir Franco at ng critical thinking ni Sir Angelo, mahalaga po sa atin, hindi lang sa mga estudyante natin, lalo na ngayong 21st century, ang humility. Okay? Doon sa collaboration ni Sir Franco, we have to be humble enough to accept na hindi natin kaya na mag-isa. At yung kay Sir Angelo naman, kailangan tanggapin natin na may posibilidad na hindi tama or hindi enough yung alam mo. So you always have to question yourself. And hopefully, makita po namin ulit kayo next Saturday and the Saturday after that at sa mga susunod pang webinars. Maraming salamat, dear kaagapay. We hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend. Magpahinga po. Huwag magkakasakit. Ayan, take care of yourselves. Again, thank you. Maraming salamat po sa inyong lahat and goodbye.